In this world of hyperconnectivity, we've all dealt with scammers, either personally or through someone we know. Some lose small amounts, others lose everything. I've known honest, hard-working people robbed of their life savings, their entire future stolen in an instant. But if you had the power to punish a scammer, how far would you go? Would you waste their time? Humiliate them? Maybe dox them? Perhaps get the local law enforcement involved? I mean, that's what most scambaiters do anyway, right? Such as Kit Boga, Pleasant Green, and the countless others. And we thank them for their service. But here's a real question. If it was in your hands, would you go further than that? Would you want these scammers to be met with the same cold, ruthless indifference that they show others? If it indeed was in your hands, would you condemn them to death by baiting them so hard they find themselves stranded in the middle of a brutal and unforgiving war zone? Well, today's story dives deep into that very question. How far is too far when fighting back? And what are the real ethical lines that we face? Our story begins. It's November 2005, and an elderly aid worker, Reverend Belcher, spends his days on the Chad-Sudan border helping people escape war and refugee camps. And then, out of nowhere, he gets an email. The email is from a man named Malu Mabongo, who claims to be the chairman of ECOWAS, a political and economic union of West African countries. Think of it like the EU, but for West Africa, and for some reason, this apparently powerful man wants Reverend Belcher to help move $10.5 million into his own personal bank account. The reason he gives? Something about overpaid government contracts? I mean, that's totally nonsense, but the Reverend, he agrees to it. He gets a 30% cut. He decides to go along with it, not for himself, but to use the money for his aid work. To help Reverend Belcher with the money transaction, we now introduce Barrister Kofi Kuku, a lawyer apparently hired by ECOWAS to assist the good Reverend handle all of the paperwork. His mission is simple: assist the Reverend to get the documents needed to make this simple money transaction happen. But months go by, and nothing happens. The Reverend fills out endless forms, answers non-stop requests for legal clarifications. It's slow, it's tedious, and simply, it's absurd. And then, around May 2006, he gets something that he wasn't expecting. It's a huge bag of cash, $145,000 in literal bills, supposedly from a US company, to support his aid work. It's an incredibly generous donation, no doubt about it. But now, there's a massive problem for the Reverend. Chana refugee camp, where the Reverend is, sits in a desolate area of eastern Chad, near the Sudanese border. That's 1,400 miles away from Lagos, Nigeria. There's almost no infrastructure, especially no banks. Carrying that much cash? Extremely dangerous for the Reverend and everybody around him. Barrister Kuku is supposed to help, but instead of helping, he starts asking Reverend Belcher for money. But there's not much he can do anyway. It's Reverend Belcher that has to travel over 1,400 miles across dangerous terrain with a big bag of cash. The logistics in danger are absurd. Kuku eventually realizes that it's not reasonable to expect Reverend Belcher to travel that far with that much money, so he reluctantly agrees to help, to somehow, somewhere, get the money into a bank account. Before we go any further, I think we should back up for a minute here. What exactly is Reverend Belcher dealing with? Well, it's called a 419 scam. The name comes from Nigeria's criminal code, section 419, which is ironically the law against fraud. A 419 scam works like this. You're told there's a huge fortune waiting for you, maybe millions of dollars locked in a foreign bank account, or cash that needs moving overseas. But it's all fake. That money never existed. The scammer will then ask you to cover quote unquote fees for legal costs, taxes, bribes before you can get your share. Victims often wire money again and again, each time chasing a payout that was nothing but smoke and mirrors. But not everyone takes the bait. Some people, they fight back. That's where 419eater.com comes in, a website launched in the early 2000s, long before YouTube scambaiting became entertainment. It was a whole community dedicated to turning the tables on scammers. Essentially, it's the original hub for scambaiting on the internet, long before viral videos made it mainstream. Which brings us back to our story. So just to let you know, Reverend Belcher, he doesn't actually exist. The Reverend, as we know him, is actually a user on 419eater.com who goes by the username Yeahwhatever. Although no longer active today, Yeahwhatever was an extremely committed scambaiter around 2005 and 2006, orchestrating some of the most elaborate over-the-top baiting schemes to mess with scammers. So yeah, Reverend Belcher isn't really a reverend. The cash isn't real. Because seriously, who just hands out a $145,000 bag of money? And this so-called lawyer Cuckoo, he and his crew are about to be dragged on a reckless 1,400-mile plus journey across Africa, chasing a bag of cash that's faker than a $3 bill. The plan sounds simple enough. Cuckoo says that he'll send two of his best associates, all the way from Lagos, Nigeria, to pick up the cash at Farchana refugee camp. Just pause and think about that. Belcher, or Yeahwhatever in disguise, is actually convincing scammers to leave the safety of their homes to go on a wild, dangerous trek across Africa, and now they're actually planning it. It's May 2nd, 2006. It's 7:14 a.m. when Yeahwhatever writes out step-by-step instructions. He'll provide a map, and once Cuckoo's associates reach the camp, they're to collect $145,000 in a locked briefcase, plus 4 additional boxes, each weighing about 7 kilos. He even specifies that the boxes are a little bigger than a laptop, and they're for Cuckoo and his associates to keep. But here's the kicker. He even promises to arrange UN escorts to make sure Cuckoo's associates can safely get the cash out. The whole thing, completely ridiculous. The scammers are meticulously plotting their route, thinking they're about to hit the jackpot, while this entire thing is nothing but a trap. And Yeahwhatever, sitting back probably watching the chaos unfold, probably laughing harder than anyone should. It's now 7:54 a.m. the very next day. Barrister Cuckoo fires back an email. He's hopeful that his associates will be on their way soon, but he's not able to pin down an exact date. He then asks Reverend Belcher, or Yeahwhatever, if the road to Farchana is safe. Also, what's exactly in those 4 mystery boxes, and what exactly is he supposed to do with them? It's almost an hour later when Yeahwhatever responds. Oh, the boxes? They're supposed to be a surprise. Apparently, each box contains an industrial laptop from Dell. According to Yeahwhatever, these machines are basically indestructible. You can drop one off a table, leave it in the rain, bake it in the sun, it wouldn't care. Dell had donated 25 of them to help people in the camps, and Yeahwhatever was giving 4 to Cuckoo and his associates as a token of appreciation. He even asks Barrister Cuckoo for the names of his associates who will be making the journey, so he can make sure they have the proper security clearance. Also, why all this fuss about the laptops? Yeahwhatever is building trust. The goal is to make Cuckoo and his crew feel comfortable, important, and capable. They need to believe this mission is legitimate, that the treasure is real, and that the person they're working with is reliable. And that's the genius of Yeahwhatever. The scammers think they're gaining confidence in this deal, but every step is carefully staged to keep them hooked, moving deeper into a trap. It's classic cat and mouse. The baiter is patient, meticulous, and completely in control. It's now May 11, 2006. It's 8 in the morning when Reverend Belcher, or Yeahwhatever, finally hears from Cuckoo's associates themselves. It's an email from Mr. Frederick Okenji. He says he and his colleague, Mr. Williams, have been picked up by Barrister Cuckoo to travel all the way to Chad. And then he explains their plan. They'll leave Lagos on May 13 and then stop in Abuja because Mr. Williams needs to pick up his renewed passport, and then they'll head straight for the refugee camp. A little after, the Reverend writes to Cuckoo. He says everything is now set with the UN and that they'll be ready to meet his men as soon as they arrive. He estimates they should arrive in about 4 to 5 days. Cuckoo writes back the next morning at 7 a.m. He says his associates have left already and they should be in Abuja right now picking up the passport. And then, from there, it'll take them about 3 more days to reach the camp. He emphasizes,
"Please take care of them. Show them the safest route. Make sure they're looked after."
He's worried. He's anxious. But what he doesn't know is that Yeahwhatever has meticulously planned this escort mission to guide the scammers straight into danger. It's May 14, 2006. Barrister Cuckoo writes an urgent message to Belcher.
"I have received sad news from the boys this morning. They have told me that the border immigration officers of both Nigeria and Cameroon have collected almost all the money they have in the pretense of giving them visas. Right now they are in N'Djamena, the capital of Chad. They need to rest. Tomorrow they will continue their journey to Ferchana camp via Abeche Road. I have sent them little money through Western Union to enable them to get to you on time. They've also sent me a telephone number to reach them while in Chad. Can you call to see if you can be in contact with them before their arrival? Please let me know as soon as you reach them. All is well."
Notice how Cuckoo still tries to sound in control, still polite, still optimistic, but he knows things are getting out of hand. The scammers are losing their cash, their control, and their sense of safety. And Belcher, aka Yeahwhatever, he's just warming up. Later that day, at 8:51 a.m., Mr. Okenji sends an email to Reverend Belcher. The header of the email shows that it comes from a Gilet Satcom IP address. For those of you that don't know, that's satellite internet. They're so far out that regular phone lines don't exist. Every message is bouncing from a dish up to a satellite that's orbiting the Earth and back down. It's slow, unreliable, and expensive, but it's their only lifeline. Okenji writes that Cuckoo has instructed them to contact Belcher directly, but there's been a setback. Mr. Williams, his partner, is sick, exhausted from the endless travel. But then he mentions the locals have told them the area ahead is highly insecure, with armed robbers, hijacked vehicles, and even hostages. You can tell that Okenji is nervous by his writing. He's aware of the dangers and the uncertainty ahead, and the words he writes carry a quiet, cautious anxiety. And as Okenji's words sink in, you can almost hear Yeahwhatever, somewhere safe and warm, smirking. He knows the joke's on them. Every obstacle, every delay, every fear. They're all part of the show he's orchestrating, and he's getting front row seats. It's 2 days later, May 16, 2006. Okenji writes to Belcher with a flicker of optimism.
"Mr. Williams is finally feeling better, and we now have everything we need to reach Ferchana camp."
Okenji explains that he and Mr. Williams do not wish to spend another night at their current location.
"I really would not want to wait or spend a night in this town again. The people here are very hostile and do not have respects for missionaries."
Okenji then explains that their plan is to rent a car as soon as possible to cover the roughly 700-kilometer journey to the camp.
"This movement will cost us about $800, which also covers tips for the customs and immigration to gain entry to the camp undisturbed."
Belcher later sends a message to Barrister Cuckoo. He lets him know that his associates are almost there, estimating no more than 2 days to arrive. He adds a casual layer of reassurance. He's excited to show them around, introduce them to important people, and provide medical treatment to Mr. Williams. All lies, of course. He then thanks Cuckoo for everything he's doing. making his message feel warm, caring, and completely trustworthy. But here's the key. Belcher, or Yeahwhatever, knows that the scammers are right on the edge of reaching Farchana camp. He's watching them close in, and this is when he begins to introduce unusual obstacles to misdirect them from moving forward. The scammers think they're almost done, that the journey is almost over, but Yeahwhatever knows better. He knows he needs to keep the story going. He needs to keep them on the hook. And just like that, he introduces a new character into the mix, someone the scammers will soon have to deal with. Later that evening, at 8:30 p.m., our cunning scambaiter, Yeahwhatever, introduces a new character, Reverend Benjamin Boyd. Boyd presents himself as an associate pastor, writing on behalf of Reverend Belcher. He then delivers unsettling news to Barrister Cuckoo. He explains that Reverend Belcher had to leave unexpectedly to provide medical care to an injured child located about 4 hours east of Farchana camp, near a small town called Al-Fashir. Belcher has taken the package with him. Boyd admits he doesn't know what the package is, but he was told that Cuckoo would understand. The plan now has of course changed. Belcher will now stay in Al-Fashir for a few days until the child is stable enough to travel by air. And then the injured child, his mother and sister, a nurse, and Cuckoo's 2 associates will fly to Abuja, Nigeria for proper medical care. Belcher himself will not be on the flight, but he will hand the package over to Cuckoo's associates. Boyd emphasizes that the flight will be faster, easier, and less expensive. And finally, Boyd warns that immigration officers along the border can be difficult. Cuckoo's associates should either avoid them or offer a small tip if needed. In truth, this is Yeahwhatever mocking Cuckoo's associates, forcing them to navigate real-life dangers for his own personal amusement. It's a brand new day, and Barrister Cuckoo fires a frantic email to Reverend Boyd. He says that he's been desperately trying to call Boyd, but he's not picking up, and he begs Boyd to call him back immediately. Cuckoo explains that his 2 associates are struggling to reach their destination in Al-Fashir, and they're terrified the plane won't wait for them, and that they'll be stranded in the middle of Chad. The tone of Cuckoo's message is pure desperation. Cuckoo pleads that his men are suffering.
They've had a horrible experience following through the road from N'Djamena all through Abeche, and complained to me how the police and other officials harassed them and exploited them through their journey.
He begs that Belcher not leave until the boys arrive, and insists that they need to take the plane back. And then, right in the middle of all this panic, Cuckoo throws in a line asking if Belcher still has the laptops with him.
Oh, by the way, did Reverend Belcher tell you if he had the laptop computers with him too?
It's almost comical. Here he is, worried that his associates might die in Chad, but he's still thinking about the promised loot. Greed and fear, side by side in the same message. But perhaps the most striking detail comes at the end of the email. Cuckoo reveals that one of the men, Mr. Okenji, Frederick, isn't just some random partner in crime. He's his friend's nephew. And now, Cuckoo admits he's deeply worried about Frederick's safety. For our scambaiter, Yeahwhatever, reading this must have been so entertaining. The scammers, who thought they were the predators, were now the ones unraveling, begging, bargaining, and clinging to both their lives and their promised reward. About 10 minutes later, Boyd, or Yeahwhatever, writes back, and he goes full-on gaslight. He pretends he's been trying to call Cuckoo for a while now, though of course he hasn't. Then he doubles down. He says the best option for Cuckoo's men is to take Belcher's plane back to Nigeria. Oh, and the laptops? Belcher didn't bring them. But there is another package. Boyd adds, I don't know what it is, but I assume you do. The subtext is obvious. Keep the mystery alive, keep Cuckoo chasing. Then Barrister Cuckoo replies back almost immediately, his tone frantic. He insists they must speak on the phone. He says his men don't want to drive all the way back. He says they've been shaken down at the border and forced to pay bribes to immigration officials. And again, he begs Boyd for any updates, warning that Sudan is a war zone. Boyd's response is pure manipulation. He tells Cuckoo that the plane is a smart choice and reassures him that the road to Al-Fashir is quiet and peaceful. In his notes though, Yeahwhatever admits,
I'm completely talking out of my ass.
Because Darfur wasn't just trouble, it was one of the most violent places on earth at the time. Hundreds were killed every day, entire villages burned. Yet here he is, coolly lying, brushing it off and telling the scammers everything is fine. Finally, Boyd signs off. He says that he'll forward Cuckoo's message to Belcher and that he'll keep trying to call. Another hollow promise and another layer of the trap. The next day, May 18, 2006. It's 8 a.m. when Cuckoo writes Boyd in a panic.
You must call me urgently. Are the boys with Reverend Belcher yet? They should be with him now.
Boyd responds just 20 minutes later. He claims that he's spoken to Belcher over the radio. Belcher hasn't seen them yet, but Boyd reassures Cuckoo not to worry. The road to Al Fashir is rough, dusty, bumpy, and hard to travel, but he's sure they'll arrive at any moment now. But then Boyd twists his knife. He asks, also, are you sure they're actually on their way? This is a mind game. Yeahwhatever soothes Cuckoo with reassurances, but then undercuts it with doubt. Why would he do this? Probably because he wants to keep Cuckoo unsettled, to make Cuckoo even more reliant on Boyd for clarity, for updates, for reassurances. It's manipulation at its finest. About 1 hour later, Cuckoo responds again, insisting that the boys really did leave for Belcher. He says that they were given a car to use, and that a UN officer gave them instructions on how to find Al Fashir. Boyd writes back about 10 minutes later, feigning surprise.
Really? Someone gave them a car? How did they explain to the owner that they would be flying back to Nigeria? How was the owner supposed to get the car back?
Boyd then promises to keep Cuckoo updated, and if nothing is heard in 24 hours, maybe he'll try to send someone to look for them. He finishes with false comfort.
Rest easy. I'm sure there's a logical explanation.
But Barrister Cuckoo is far from ease. About 2 hours later, his frustration boils over and he writes,
I do not understand why you do not call me. This is not a child game. Please find another phone to use.
He's absolutely terrified for his boys.
The car does not matter. The boys can use it.
He begs Boyd to send someone to look for them before dark. He just wants them back safe. And here's what's striking. At this moment, Cuckoo doesn't care about the money, or even the so-called package. His desperation is purely for the safety of his associates. One of them, remember, is his friend's nephew. All he cares about now is that his men are still alive. It's 9:25 p.m. in the evening when Boyd finally replies to Cuckoo. He apologizes for the delay.
I've been really busy around here with all sorts of things.
Then he adds a new layer of suspense. He claims he sent people out to look for the boys, equipped with food, water, and even extra fuel. But then he plants doubt.
Hopefully the boys took the correct road to Al Fashir. I would hate to think they are hundreds of kilometers off course. It would be nearly impossible to find them.
The pilot, however, cannot wait any longer and must leave for Abuja in the morning. Boyd then shifts back to logistics, asking if Cuckoo is able to meet the pilot in the morning to pick up the money. Cuckoo responds the next day. He admits that he doesn't know Abuja very well, but he still requests for the pilot's name and his phone number. Boyd replies back a little later with one of his most mocking twists yet.
The pilot's name is Troy McClure.
For anyone that doesn't know, that's not a real pilot. That's a character from The Simpsons. Yeahwhatever is openly mocking Cuckoo, and Cuckoo doesn't realize it. Boyd adds that the plane didn't arrive in Al Fashir as planned due to mechanical issues, but he insists this is good news. It gives the boys another day to make it there. Then a little later, Boyd sends an even darker email. He says he and Reverend Belcher are gravely worried about the boys. It's been days now with no sign of them. And then he confides something off the record. Boyd claims to know an associate who can arrange dirty work for the right price. Someone in the Sudan Liberation Army, for example, which is a rebel movement currently holding the upper hand in western Darfur. With Cuckoo's permission, Boyd says he would like to reach out to this man to help find the boys. Barrister Cuckoo replies back several hours later, and his response is quite fascinating.
I am very surprised to hear you speak of mercenaries like this. How is it that a man of God knows such things in people?
And then, for the first time, Barrister Cuckoo begins to poke real holes in the story.
If Reverend Belcher has a plane now, why didn't he fly to a bank of his own with the money? Why have people come to receive it in person?
It looks like Barrister Cuckoo is finally beginning to wake up. But Yeahwhatever doesn't flinch. About 15 minutes later, he sends back a calm explanation. He admits he had wondered the same thing until Belcher explained that this particular plane only became available a few weeks ago due to the intensified troubles in the region. Once again, Yeahwhatever plugs the holes in his story, just enough to keep Cuckoo hooked. It's now tomorrow morning, May 20th, 2006, and Yeahwhatever pulls off his most outrageous stunt yet. He calls Barrister Cuckoo from an unknown Sudanese number.
Hello?
He pretends to be Mr. Omar Hassan Ahmed al-Bashir, a police officer from the city of Khartoum, Sudan. He informs Mr. Cuckoo that Mr. Okenji and Mr. Williams both are being held in Khartoum for immigration violations. They were picked up about 50 kilometers south of Al-Fashir. The officer reassures Cuckoo that the boys are just fine, but they can't speak on the phone until they appear before a judge in mid-August. That's about 3 months later. The officer tells Cuckoo that the boys can be let go earlier, but of course, there's a catch. He demands a bribe of 1 million Sudanese dinar. That's about $4,000 and he makes Cuckoo swear not to tell any other officials. Also, it turns out that Mr. Okenji is not the nephew of a friend, but is in fact Mr. Cuckoo's own nephew. This has apparently caused a lot of tension within Mr. Cuckoo's family back in Lagos. Yeahwhatever later admits that he tried to do his best Arabic accent for this phone call, but it sounded more like Indian. But his impressions work because Cuckoo totally buys it. He begins to make immediate arrangements to travel to Sudan and retrieve the boys.
Enjoy your trip, sucker.
Yeahwhatever writes mockingly,
I hear Khartoum is lovely this time of year.
Oh, and the best part? The name Yeahwhatever gave the scammer, Mr. Omar Hassan Ahmed al-Bashir, that's not just any name. That's the president of Sudan, meaning if Cuckoo actually goes to a police station in Khartoum and asks for an officer al-Bashir, he's going to be met with some very strange looks. The next morning at 9:37 a.m., Cuckoo fires off an urgent email to Belcher.
I need your help. The boys have been detained in Sudan and the police are demanding $80,000 for their release.
Wait a minute, wasn't it just $4,000 on the phone? Yeahwhatever has Cuckoo doubling down on the panic, but Cuckoo is playing a double game. He's supposedly worried about his nephew, but also inflates the bribe, protecting his own interests and guilt-tripping Belcher for cash. The next morning at 7:02 a.m., Boyd writes to Cuckoo that he's spoken to Belcher. Belcher is on his way to Khartoum to see what he can do about getting the boys out of the clink. A couple hours later, Belcher sends his own email.
I'm in Khartoum now. I'll do my best to get the boys out, but we need to move fast before others in authority make things harder. First, I'm going to find that police officer who demanded that $80,000. That's way out of line. We could fight this in court, but that could take years. Yet again, I'm not the legal expert that you are. But as you know, if they're being investigated and prosecuted as terrorists, it will take years to get through a trial and get this over with. Believe me, you do not want to spend a single day in a Sudanese jail. They are horrible places to be in. I think we should just pay this police officer and get everyone out of here. But you, Mr. Cuckoo, need to get here as soon as possible. It is totally impossible that the boys would ever be released to me.
It's now tomorrow morning when Barrister Cuckoo writes to Belcher that he's made travel arrangements to fly to Khartoum as soon as possible. He has had to sell his car to pay for the flight and desperately requests Belcher for his phone number. He also begs Belcher for the $80,000 cash bribe up front. Belcher writes back, pointing out the irony.
Why did you have to sell your car? I thought you were a millionaire lawyer.
However, he continues with his dark comedy. He tells Barrister Cuckoo that he's met with Officer al-Bashir.
What a scary man. He has some serious issues. He was smoking marijuana right in my face. Oh, by the way, people here barter marijuana like it's gold. As a priest, I can't tell you to bring some with you, but I bet it wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, that's right. Yeahwhatever is basically telling Cuckoo to smuggle drugs into Sudan, a country where that can get you executed. But it's not over yet. He lays it on even further.
Oh, by the way, about that $80,000? Yeah, I'm not gonna bring that. We're not gonna pay them a single dollar. I'm ready to take this to court if needed.
Barrister Cuckoo responds back almost 1 hour later, explaining the car sale.
I did not say that I have no money. My good friend, who is billionaire businessman here in Nigeria, is asking me to be a managing director in his telecommunication company. I am so busy in this endeavor, I do not have time to do any business in Nigeria, and that is why I am a little financially tight now.
Cuckoo signs off by saying that he appreciates Belcher meeting the police official, but he would appreciate Belcher's financial assistance. Also, he doesn't want Belcher coming with them to the prison to retrieve the boys, so he can pay the apparently $80,000 bribe without any further difficulties. About 2 hours later, Yeahwhatever replies as Belcher with mock sympathy.
Oh, I'm so sorry you had to sell your car. Running a telecommunications firm though, that's fantastic. Things are really looking up for you. Well, have a safe flight and let me know once you're there.
And with that, Yeahwhatever has Cuckoo fully committed, running around Sudan, panicked and financially strained. It's now May 25, 2006, 2 days after Cuckoo's previous email. He fires up a frantic message to Reverend Belcher.
I am in Khartoum and I have tried calling you many times. The phone just keeps ringing with no answer or voicemail. You must call me urgently. I need to see you to get some money before going to get the boys from the prison.
At this moment, Yeahwhatever searches Cuckoo's email IP address, and he confirms that he's actually traveled to Sudan. He comments that Cuckoo is much more reliable than his two associates. So Cuckoo has actually traveled all the way from Lagos, Nigeria to Khartoum, Sudan, which is 2,064 miles. But the plane had to make a stop in Germany, so his total distance traveled is 5,000 miles. About 1 hour later, Reverend Belcher doesn't reply back, but Reverend Boyd does.
Thank God you're all right. I have some very bad news.
And here's where Yeahwhatever really starts cooking the dark comedy. He spins an insane story that the police raided Belcher's apartment in Khartoum and arrested him and his driver. The reason? Retaliation for Belcher's harsh conversation with the made-up officer al-Bashir. Yeahwhatever then ups the tension even further. The United Nations is furious, and the US State Department is involved. And the apartment owner fled with the money Belcher was carrying. Yeahwhatever warns Cuckoo that if the police ever find the cash, they could claim that Belcher is a terrorist or a spy. And then he adds,
Call me paranoid, but you should probably stay off the cell phone too. I believe the Sudanese police were secretly listening in on Reverend Belcher's phone conversations.
Every line here is calculated. Cuckoo is now panicked, paranoid, and thinking the whole world is collapsing around him. All while Yeahwhatever sits back, entirely in control, stringing him along with a mix of fake danger and bureaucratic chaos. It's a few hours later when Barrister Cuckoo cracks under the pressure.
This situation is becoming unbearable. I went to the prison today, but I was met with hostility. The officials deny having the boys. This stress is more than I can handle. If I go back to Nigeria without the boys, I am dead.
Reverend Boyd replies back later that night at 10:25 p.m., completely unfazed.
I'm glad you're okay and not in jail. Just try to relax. Being a lawyer the way you are, I'm sure you already know that.
Total mockery. Boyd then sends Cuckoo a fake newspaper clipping about Reverend Belcher's supposed arrest. Now think about this. Cuckoo is sitting in Khartoum, believing that international media outlets are splashing headlines about the scam gone wrong, like he's at the center of some massive geopolitical crisis. The absurdity is off the charts. Cuckoo thinks CNN or the New York Times are out there running stories like, Breaking news, Reverend caught in Sudan scam drama, Nigerian lawyer still at large. It's pure nonsense, but to Cuckoo, it feels real. And then Boyd doubles down with the mockery.
This story is all over the place. I am confident that the Sudanese government will be forced to cooperate.
Then, in what can only be described as Yeahwhatever's most sadistic troll yet, Boyd tells Cuckoo to relax. Go explore the city.
Go have a glass of wine somewhere.
In Khartoum, Sudan, a place where alcohol is not just banned, it's punishable. Yeahwhatever isn't just dangling fake hope anymore. He's actively pushing Cuckoo towards danger, laughing at the idea that a scammer might try to follow his ridiculous advice. The next morning at 7:31 a.m., Boyd drops another bomb.
I've only just got a second here, but I just heard that the boys and Reverend Belcher may not even be in Khartoum anymore. I heard they might all be in Port Sudan on the Red Sea. If I hear anything more, I'll let you know.
The constant shifting of locations, Khartoum one moment, Port Sudan the next, is all part of the trap set by Yeahwhatever. Cuckoo is now already financially drained. He's emotionally wrecked, and he's chasing ghosts across Sudan, while Yeahwhatever just keeps moving the finish line further away. However, by now, the game was unraveling, and Yeahwhatever knew it. It's now 9 a.m., and he writes directly to the audience.
The gig may be up.
Yeahwhatever has been fielding multiple phone calls from the numbers that he gave Cuckoo. Calls he had to hang up on, and now he admits, if Cuckoo is actually talking to real government officials, the jig might finally be up. Everything he's built, every lie, every fake character, all of it could collapse at any second. Cuckoo fires back, and he is furious.
Smart guy, huh? The officials I talked to say your church doesn't exist anywhere, and the police officer al-Bashir is actually the president?
He actually accuses Yeahwhatever of being a fraud and unleashes a dark and personal threat.
I will spend my life to find you, and when I do, you and your family will suffer.
The irony is ridiculous. The scammer himself is calling out Yeahwhatever for deception. Oh, and here comes the punchline. Belcher responds, calm, collected, and cruelly mocking.
Oh, hi, Mr. Cuckoo. Or is it Achiu? That's your real name, right?
He congratulates Cuckoo on finally figuring it out, then continues with a savage precision.
I was starting to think you were retarded or something.
He explains why he did it. It wasn't for money, not for fun, but to punish those who prey on honest, hardworking people. Of course he knew that Cuckoo, or Achiu, was a scammer from his very first email 8 months ago. And then he starts taunting his nephew, Mr. Okenji, or his real name, One.
How do you suppose One is doing? Is he still alive? Or do you think he's getting a regular ass by the barbarian horde in some prison in Darfur?
He's being completely ruthless, but he still continues, reminding Cuckoo that thousands of other people have been watching this unfold, enjoying the chaos as much as he has. And finally, Yeahwhatever doesn't even spare Cuckoo's family from embarrassment. He imagines the scene in Lagos, family members shaking their heads, wondering how their sons ended up like this. It's a brutal ending for Cuckoo and his two associates. Their world has been flipped upside down, and all they can do is stew in the chaos that they helped create. It's now May 29, 2006, 3 days after Cuckoo's previous email. After receiving no contact, Yeahwhatever decides to fire off one last message to our beloved barrister Cuckoo.
Oh, hi there, Cuckoo. How's it going? Remember when I told you that you were famous? Well, here's a website that made it all happen. 419eater.com.
Yeahwhatever even has the audacity to ask Cuckoo for a photograph, just so he can complete the website. But unfortunately, we never got one. And then he gives one gut-punching reminder to Cuckoo. He taunts him about his missing nephew, Mr. Okenji, or his real name, One.
As an extra incentive for your photograph, I will put in a good word for you with your family, telling them that it is not your fault that One is either dead or someone's prison toy. Thanks in advance for your cooperation. Blessings, Reverend Belcher.
At this point, while Yeahwhatever was mocking Cuckoo, posting the saga online for thousands to laugh at, he was also forced to confront the ethical questions that come with scambaiting. On the website, he published a self-reflection titled A Question of Ethics. In it, he acknowledges the debate that his scam baiting has sparked. Some saw it as just desserts for predatory criminals. Others were horrified. Was this crossing a line? Was it possible that innocent people had been harmed along the way? For Yeahwhatever though, the moral calculus seemed clear. He had started scam baiting in late 2005, but the turning point came when he spoke to a real 419 victim. It was a 53-year-old disabled man whose house was being foreclosed. $153,000 in debt, scammed out of his life savings. The man was in tears, on the edge of suicide. That, Yeahwhatever argues, is the human cost of these scams. It's the vulnerable who the scammers really prey on. So when Cuckoo and his crew try to squeeze money out of a supposed priest collecting donations for refugees in Darfur, Yeahwhatever wasn't going to lose any sleep. They knew what they were doing. But that by itself does not erase the ethical questions. First of all, there's the no third party rule in the scam baiting community. Do not involve real people who might be put at risk. In this case, Cuckoo's associates did actually cross paths with the UN security personnel near the Chad border. Did that break the rule? Yeahwhatever says no. He compares it to scammers being sent on wild goose chases to Western Union offices. In his mind, a couple of scammers near armed security was less risky than putting a real clerk behind a counter in harm's way. Then there's the bigger question, baiter responsibility. What if Mr. Okenji and Mr. Williams really did die in Darfur? Was Yeahwhatever responsible? He didn't think so.
If I had a bag of money and I tossed it off a cliff, and a person jumped off the cliff after the money, would I be responsible? I would say no, even if I had a pretty good idea the person was gonna go after it.
In other words, the scammers chose to go. They knew about the risk involved. And if they ended up in prison, or worse, well, that was on them. Finally, Yeahwhatever reassures his readers. There is no evidence that anyone died because of this bait. He says they're most likely in jail, and there's no evidence to the contrary. He signs off with a line that captures his whole attitude towards this entire affair.
So try to rest easy about all this. I know I will.
This story even makes it into an academic journal. In 2014, researcher Andreas Zingerl wrote about scam baiting strategies and highlighted this very case. Two scammers lured all the way from Nigeria to the Chad-Sudan border, where they disappeared. The article points out the controversy. While some scam baiters defend the bait as fair game, others argue that it breaks the community's unwritten third parties rule. It shows just how blurred the line can get between clever trickery and crossing into dangerous, even unethical territory. So where does all of this leave us? Two scammers vanished on the Sudanese border, their fate still unknown. Cuckoo left with nothing but rage and humiliation, and Yeahwhatever, he walked away unapologetic, convinced he was on the side of justice. But the story doesn't give us any easy answers. Was this brilliant vigilante justice or reckless cruelty? Is it ethical to use deception against deceivers, even if it risks real-world harm? In the end, the road to Chad is less about what happened to these scammers, and more about what it says about us and our appetite for revenge. What do you think? Did Yeahwhatever go too far or not far enough? And if you had the power in your hands, what would you do?